It works so much better if I'm actually on camera. Good morning and welcome to the Prosperity Project. I see that we already have some folks ready for this prosperity today. Good morning, Darnaro Evans. Hey, Tequila. Hey, Juanita. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Nikki Thomas, just in case we have not met. This is the Prosperity Project, where we give you the breakthroughs you need to unleash your healthiest, wealthiest self. And that always sounds good to me because self is where it all begins. And we know that, but we need to be reminded of it quite often. So I'm a Bay Area radio personality. I'm also a digital creator. I love to bring you transformation experiences. You know, that's that whole unleashing part, because there is some health and some wealth there on the inside, and we want it to come out. I see you, Chuck, in Monroe, Louisiana. Delph is in the building. I feel totally, completely blessed now that you are here, Delph. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. Today is a super important show. It's kind of especially for the ladies, but I do want the fellas to stick around because it's important that y'all understand a few things. Hi, Stacy. Good morning to you. Okay, so we're going to have a powerful discussion with our guest expert, and we're going to give you our top 3 tips for creative activation, rising into creative activation. Hey, Michelle, baby, how you doing? Because we all know that the things that we have on the inside have to be activated and amplified, because sometimes they're there and they're asleep, they're dormant. And for us to rise into it, it takes conversations like this, and it takes a little help from an expert. And that's what we're all about. So let me tell you all about her. She is a writer, a creativity mentor, and a cyclical living guide. You need her in your life, whether you know it or not. Through her content and program, she teaches women how to harness their hormonal cycle and the cycles of nature so that they can create lives and businesses with less force and more flow. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. All this time I was wondering what was wrong with me. And this is it. She has an MFA in creative writing from the New School and has worked in the arts and creative industries for 11 years. You can connect with her on Instagram at Sarah. Is that a 0 in the middle? Blake. You can always click here in the post here and find out more. Please welcome Sarah Blake to the Prosperity Project. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me.
Straight from Toronto this morning.
Yeah. Yep.
I love it. I love it. You know, Toronto is one of my favorite cities. And any and all excuses to connect with anything and anybody in Toronto, I'm so totally game. So,
That makes me
so
happy.
yes, I'm very happy to connect today. So welcome, and let's just go ahead and jump right in. Hi, Kimberly Wingfield. I see you, hun. All right, so this is one of those conversations, Sarah, that we knew that there was an issue, but we didn't know how to call it. I'm from the South here in the United States. We didn't know how to call it or what it was or how to claim it. Cyclical living. Tell us more about this and how this all began for you.
Yes. Okay. So I just want to start by putting it out there that if you are a woman watching this, if you are not a woman watching this, you just have to know this. We change. Okay. We have phases to our energy. We are not the same person really from day to day and week to week. And we kind of know this because we know we're affected by things like the weather. We know we're affected by other people's energy. But for those of us with female hormones, we know we have a cycle, but what we don't know is the full extent to which that cycle brings us through these changes every single day of the month. And so cyclical living is basically understanding what these cycles in your body do to you, how they affect you, how they affect your mood, how they affect your energy, how they affect your creativity, which is my personal favorite side of it. And understanding that so you can harness it, because I really believe that we were all designed to be in flow. You know, we were not designed to be forcing and in the struggle Not that struggles don't come up, but we have so much in our body that is truly programmed for us to be in flow. Now, the way I got into this work, I sort of had two paths that came together. The first path was that I've always wanted to be a creative person in the world. I knew I was going to be in some kind of creative field when I grew up. And I was a piano teacher, and then I wanted to be a writer, and I did my MFA in creative writing. And then I started in the online space as a copywriter because that kind of felt natural. So I was doing that for a little bit. In the meantime, parallel path, in my early 20s and late teens, I went through a whole health crisis where I lost my own cycle for a year, thought that was okay. Didn't really think too much of it until I was, I asked my mom one day, hey, I haven't had a period for a year. And she said, that's not really supposed to happen. Uh-huh. And the funny thing about it was, I thought I was very ill. Like I thought, okay, there must be something severely wrong with me if this happened, right? Turns out it was the result of me not eating enough, exercising too much, and because I was trying to fit certain body standards, right? And overworking and having too much stress in my life. And so one thing that I want to communicate for all of us who've ever felt issues with our cycles, so much of it is really just the basics of your lifestyle. We always want to go to those extremes, like, oh, I must have, some issue, I must have some disease. But a lot of the time, it's about your stress levels. It's about your nutrition. It's about how you're taking care of yourself. And we haven't really been taught how to take care of ourselves, like really take care of ourselves. It hasn't been prioritized in the way that most of us grew up, especially taking care of our hormones, which can be complicated and delicate in a certain way. So I was going through this health issue as well as this creative journey. And basically where it landed me was realizing that copywriting was fine, but it wasn't really my passion. What my real passion was helping women to harness their cycles so they could pursue their own creative dreams. Because I saw too much burnout happening, right, in the industry. I saw too much confusion in terms of what do I do when, and I put too much on my plate, or now I can't do any of it. And just the feeling of like discouragement. And I'm thinking these people aren't tapped into their bodies. And if they were, they would know you have to have a resting phase. You have to have a dreaming phase, an action phase, and all these other phases. So this is how it all came together for me. And now it's just my obsession to talk about this all day long and support women in finding out how to make it work for them as well.
Wow. Girl, I'm over here taking notes, number one. There's a lot of things in there. Number one, it's permission to own what's happening. And number two words, because you're lighting me up with just a few words here. You said we change from day to day. And I used to describe it. I had a friend of mine and we was like, okay, yeah, I die and then I come back to life. That's the way we would, explain what the month looks like. And that's literally how it feels. So, my first question is, does it have to feel like that? I'm dead. I'll be back next week. Or is there an easier way? What does this flow thing feel and look like?
Yeah. So it doesn't have to feel necessarily that extreme, but I think it's important to just recognize and normalize that one side of the spectrum is our highest energy and the other side of the spectrum is our lowest energy. So when we're looking from the point of extremes, it can feel like being dead and coming back to life. But what's important to acknowledge is we're not going from extreme to extreme every single day. We're following this pattern of low energy, rising energy, peak energy, and then decreasing energy. So on the two opposite sides of the spectrum, there's the menstrual phase, which is that low energy phase, and then the ovulation phase, which is that high energy phase. But the cycle is gradually happening throughout the month. Now, when we feel dead or when we feel really low energy, some of the things that I like to just put these questions in people's minds is, is that because you're not really allowing yourself to rest? And so you're feeling dead because you're expecting that you're going to feel this higher level of energy, and you've put things on your plate, on your schedule, that are expecting you to operate in a way that just feels like impossible. Because when we learn to tune our lives towards like, okay, I'm going to slow down this week, we don't actually feel so dead because we don't have the expectation that we're going to be able to perform at our 110%, right? So the idea of like, when is it a hormonal imbalance or when is it normal? Like, that's a complex thing and definitely requires working with a practitioner to figure out that for you. But it is very normal to feel lower energy in that lower energy period and then have a higher energy time. And the thing we have to remember is none of it's permanent, right? So we sometimes think, oh my gosh, I have this low energy. It's going to be like this forever. I've burnt out. And then we realize in like 5 days, we're like, oh, okay, I'm getting better, you know? But same thing with the high energy. We can't always expect ourselves to be on, right? We have to realize that maybe I'm feeling really good and really in flow right now, but I have to start to anticipate that in 2 weeks, I may be feeling completely different. I may be feeling in my own little cave, in my own little space, in my own world, and want to be introspective. And that is just as valid and beautiful and supportive of our lives as it is when we're like checking all the boxes, you know, doing all the things. So there is a spectrum for sure, and it shouldn't be debilitating. And to make it not debilitating, we have to start to work with it instead of against it.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so you caught me at the exact right time, Sarah. Let me tell you. Today is the first day of my cycle. I know that might be too much information for some folks, but hey, we told you about what the conversation was going to be when we started. And I'm not at the lowest point of the energy. I feel it coming on, but I know it's going to get a little bit worse. Mm-hmm. And then I have all these things on my to-do list. So I probably made a little wrong left turn there, where the to-do list should be next week and not this week. Because what it always feels like to me is like, hey, yeah, literally, I feel I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to think about any. I don't want to look at my to-do list. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to lay here. But there comes a day or a time when it'll all come flooding back to me. Every great idea, I've got all the energy for it. Oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire next week, and I'm positive. You know, the energy is just, you know, I mean, I thought it was so many other things, you know, along in life. It's like, oh my God, how should I be going back and forth? But so you're saying there should be a plan that looks like the energy that we have.
Yes. Yes. So one of the most liberating things I think you can do if you have a cycle is to start tracking it, because first of all, it just gets you into the mentality of, okay, yeah, I am going to be changing. And some of us track in the sense that we kind of know when our next, you know, period is going to come, but we don't really track like how long each phase is, or sort of when the energy is probably going to start dipping. So I just love, just for everybody, just start with a basic app. You know, you can Google a different period apps and use whichever one. You can experiment or just choose whatever first one comes up, because just the practice of doing that helps you to realize that there are these changes. And then when you start getting a little bit familiar with your own cycle, then and you start to notice things. And what I like to do with my clients is actually have them journal just a couple lines every day, how they felt that day, what felt really in flow, and what felt a little hard. And they start to notice like, oh, well, I felt really in flow creating today, but what's so funny is last week I didn't. So next cycle, I'm going to plan to do my creation in that same kind of week. And I'm going to plan to do more introspective work in that other week. And so it does take a little bit of time to start getting used to your own rhythm and your own cycle. But just by starting to notice, you'll already begin to see, okay, I probably don't want to schedule 5 meetings on this day. And I probably want to, you know, push them to another day, or maybe spread them out. Or something that I love to tell women who don't necessarily have all of this freedom with their time is just planning their self-care. Like if you know you're in a low energy week, how can you get to bed a little bit earlier? Or how can you outsource some of the tasks around the house, whether that's getting partner and family to help you out, or whether it's like, you know, doing a meal delivery service or something, and just starting to anticipate, like, we need our energy. Our energy is just such a precious resource, right? Because, you know, a lot of us think about time, but the thing is, if you're spending all your time in bed, or if you're spending all your time worn out, well, you know, you can't really do anything. Whereas when you know how to harness your energy, you work efficiently because you're doing the right thing at the right time. And that's really the combination that we all need, is to understand, how can I get this done in a way that feels most in flow, that feels most supportive of my goals, and feels most aligned with my energy. And then when it's done, you're like, great, I did it. And now I'm moving into another phase and I'll do something else, because as my energy changes, my activities get to change too.
I love this. The thing that is interesting to me, it's like this is a great layer that we're peeling back right now. And at the same time, there's other things that exist on top of this, because when we're out of flow, what usually happens with me, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it's probably happening with a lot of us, it's like we beat ourselves up because we're not functioning like we want to every day of the month. I wrote the words feedback loop. So I am very hard on myself when I can't get something done that I want to get done. And on top of the energy, that feedback loop will kill every last one of my dreams and good thoughts about myself, because, you know, it's just going on and on. It's like, well, you said you were going to do this. Why haven't you done it? It's not hard. And, you know, it's just this big block of resistance. Because like I said, it's like, I don't even want to look at the to-do list. I've written it out all nice and pretty, but I don't even want to look at it. I can't get it together to say, what are the three? I can't get it together, you know? So it's almost as if we can budget better when we know the facts, because, you know, I was looking at your Instagram, and you were saying when people work with you, they find that they have a lot of time left over, you know, a lot of time. So it's just like looking at your money. It's like, no, you spent this on coffee and snacks and sandwiches and all kind of little bitty things that just took off a big chunk of the money. So it's the same way with your energy. It's like once you can concentrate the efforts somewhere, it's like, wow, it's going to open up over here in this big, wonderful way. So I just wrote down all those words: feedback loop, energy, thinking, and resistance, and how it all builds up. Is there like
Yeah.
one missing link you can tell us that would make it feel better as far as the resistance that we have?
Oh, well, I'll just share that when you were speaking about this, like, I've had clients who truly thought they either had something wrong with them, like that they either had some sort of mental health issue that was making them not able to kind of get a handle on their energy, or that thought that secretly deep down they were like the laziest, least motivated people ever. And it's just, what I think is missing. Here's that. Okay, now it's coming to me. What's missing? I think what's missing truly is just the open communication about this experience. And this is why I love, like, I work with people one-on-one and I love that. But I really love when I have my group program running, because so much healing is like expedited, because these women are hearing each other say things that they've thought in their most
The
private,
feedback.
dark moments.
Yes, yes,
Exactly. And
yes.
it's like, you know what? Actually, if you think you're the laziest person and you think you're the laziest person and we're probably all wrong, right?
It can't be true. Oh my God. Sarah, listen. I always have this conversation about body image. And I love to share the body image story, because for me, grew up in the South, skinny, that was just not cute at the time. And I had these massive body image issues. And the thing is, all of us seem to have massive body image issues, no matter what the size and the shape. When I read the story about Beyonce having body image issues, I was like, you can't talk about body unless you say Beyonce or Janet Jackson. And they're all saying they have the same issue. So how could it be true? If it's not true for Beyonce, it can't be true for you either. You know?
Exactly.
And I love Lizzo, the fact that she's like, she didn't get the memo that something was supposed to be wrong. You know, she loves her body. She likes to flaunt her body. End of story. You know, so I love that you're putting it in the same container where it's like we all have these crazy thoughts. It's impossible that they're true. It's impossible that it's true that there's something wrong with you, that you're lazy, that, you know, it's just not. It's not. So yeah, you're right. That's it. It's like, this is not what it is. There is nothing wrong. If you could just get that off the table first,
yeah,
you know, you're on a good path. So, whew, I don't know what kind of churches y'all have in Toronto, but the churches in you know, in the South, we got to break out the church fan when it gets really hot. And the preacher is really preaching. You are really preaching right now, Sarah. This is really good. Oh, I gotta fan myself for real. Okay, so thank you so much. So let's move into our top three, because I feel like the questions I have are all addressed in the top three that we want to share today. So these are the things that will help you rise into creative activation. And part two, before we even went live today, we had a little bit of a conversation about just like you're saying, like the group energy is so powerful because you get feedback from other people that lets you know that, okay, no, wait a minute. This is crazy that I'm thinking this. This is a together person over here. Why is she thinking this? And also to get rid of these, you know, kind of loops in our head, and also intergenerational. It's like, this is the thing that we learn from our younger generations that has been hammered into our heads. It's been hammered into my head. If you didn't do this, that means you're lazy. If you didn't get this, that means you didn't work hard enough. If it came too easy, that means you don't deserve it. You're supposed to be struggling out here. You know, like our moms and our grandmothers, you're supposed to be struggling like that for it to count. It's supposed to be harder for you because you're a woman. It's stuff that we, you know, it's not going to just go away, but we need the repetition and the constant conversation with the generation that was not inundated with it. So, hey, Felicia, how you doing, hon? So it's great that we have a structure. This is why I put the top three in the Prosperity Project, so that we'd have like some action steps to follow. So, you know, if you can get these into your system, I feel like you'll be in a good first step here. So our first one here, manage your inner critic, and you're filling in some blanks behind that. Tell us more.
Yeah. So, okay. Something I actually just learned this summer is that our inner critic lives in a certain part of our brain. And when that part of our brain is turned on, so that part of your brain, just to get a little technical today, it's called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Okay. So when that part of our brain is turned on, is when not just our inner critic, but all of our critical thinking is happening. Now, what's very interesting is when they have studied what you need to get into flow state, they've studied you actually need to turn that part of your brain off, meaning that creative thinking is turning the critic off. Like, it's literally impossible to be creative when your critic is turned on. And because this part of your brain, it has to flip. It's kind of like flipping a switch. Like, you're either on the critical side or you're on the creative side. And so for those of us who want to be creatively active and want to rise into creative activation, which is something I'm so passionate about, we have to learn how to manage that inner critic. And one of the best ways to do that, I think, is to, if you feel a creative impulse, and we'll talk about this in the second step as well, but we're not there yet. Don't worry about what it's going to become or what it means. If you have an idea and you're not sure if it's going to turn into a book or a movie or just an Instagram post, like, it doesn't matter, right? We can't put ourselves in a box too soon, because that's the critical thinking part of our brains. We have to be able to just have the idea, let it roll around in our brains, and take one step and just see where it leads us, right? Instead of thinking that we have to analyze and do everything perfectly. You actually can't, because as soon as you start analyzing, you turn the creative part off. You're in the critical thinking part. So it's just so interesting that now we know from neuroscience that our critic, our creative are two different parts of us, and we need them to be separate. So yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but that kind of blew my mind when I learned that like you can't be creative and critical at the same time.
So tell me, because you had put it in a certain way when we were, before we went live. So it's turn on your inner creator and turn off your inner critic. How did it go again?
Yeah, just separate them, basically. Separate your inner creator from your inner critic. So basically, this is like, when you're in creative mode, you just get to make stuff. You just get to explore. You just get to follow your curiosity. And then if you want to take the thing that you've created and turn it into something that has structure, that requires that analytical part of your brain, do that later, right? So maybe you're writing something and you have an idea and you're like, oh, I'm going to just write about this idea that I have. You don't have to know what it's going to become. You just have to get it out there. And then later on, you can actually start to think, okay, what is this? How do I want to share this? What is this really about? And then that's more of the critical part of your brain that comes in after. But at the beginning, it's all creative, generative, new, curiosity, fresh. It's that energy that we need.
Okay, I got it. Because I'm putting the bits and pieces together. I've heard this talked about in lots of different language here. Mel Robbins, if you are familiar with Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule, she says it's important to let your mind wander. And that's the creator that you're talking about. And also I read maybe it was a podcast. Focus is the opposite of creativity. So it's like creativity is letting everything come in, all of it. Catch the parts that you can catch, write it down, and then you might want to turn on that other part to separate, prioritize, analyze, schedule, and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And what's so interesting is what we know about that, and this is really helpful for any of you who may be creatives or maybe exploring some dream or passion. A lot of the time, if you tell yourself, I'm going to go sit at my desk and get ideas now, you kind of find yourself sitting and getting distracted and it's not happening, right? No, ideas come, I know, but like I've done that. I've thought this is my creative time and I've tried to come up with my best ideas. And I can say from years of figuring this out for myself, as well as working with other people, a lot of the time our best ideas come in kind of unexpected ways. They come when we're on a walk. They come when we're in the shower. They come when we're just, going about our business and it's like, boom, light bulb moment. And what's important then, and this will actually lead into step 2, is that when you do get that idea, you harness it. And you don't just let it float away, because a lot of us think, oh, that's silly. No, that could be your best idea ever, right?
Exactly. But that's exactly it. It's like when you say creativity, I have a deck of angel cards, and it says daydream. And it says daydream is the seat of creativity. So it's like, when you're driving or taking a shower or anything where you're really you're really meditating when you're doing these things. It's like you've got all these other things, you're pushing them out of the way and you're opening to receive. And I think that's a great nugget, because it's just as long as you have something to catch it in. Like for me, like the talk to text into a document, just blah, 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 blah. I'll figure it out later. Or, it's like just having that at hand is very helpful. So just knowing those 2 steps, it's like, hey, let it all flood in. And then, you could turn on the Mr. or Miss Analytical. And somebody else who talks about this too is Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yep.
in big magic. Because it's like if you're a creative / creator, that is kind of how your brain works. It's like it'll come rushing towards you, honey, and you can't possibly catch all of it. You
Exactly.
can't possibly catch all of it. So, catch the first three and see if you can put them in a container. And sometimes those ideas will come back. And, it might be the right time to execute them. So, and dare I add, just kind of turning off the judgment part too is a big piece of it, because that's the feedback. It's like, well, you should have done this by now. That is not going to get you any extra points, because it's like there's the critic, and then there's the judge and executioner in there too. So
yes,
man, okay, this is really good. So are we moving on to part 2 now?
Yeah, part two.
Okay.
So trust your inspiration means kind of what I was saying, that when you get that hit, when you get that idea, when you get, even if it's an inspiration to call someone or check in on someone. One thing I'm exploring, and I did an Instagram live about this myself yesterday, was this idea of quantum creation versus linear creation. Yes, I know. So when we think about the quantum, we think about infinite possibilities, and time is not this linear thing, right? It's not, things don't just like follow this logical pattern, but in fact, a lot of what we see depends on our perception, and there's so much more in reality than we're aware of. And what I love about this idea is that when we're trusting our inspiration, we don't necessarily need to have it all figured out to get started, because actually sometimes what happens is we have an idea to do something, and we don't know it's going to lead to the next 10 things just by taking that one step. Sometimes we want to have the whole plan figured out. And I was talking about, like, imagine if some of the best-selling authors were more worried about, well, how do I make this a best-selling book? How many pages are in each chapter of a best-selling book, and analyzed it that way. The books wouldn't have the magic and the inspiration. Like, you have to just begin, and then things will start to take shape. So I think what's really important about this is sometimes we feel nervous or unsure without a plan, and it does take a bit of a reframe in our minds to realize that we're supported, right? The universe is supporting us, other people are supporting us, and we don't have to fully figure everything out before we take the first step. I've had times where it's so funny in my business. I've just been really inspired to talk about something one day that was not in my plan, let's say, right? It wasn't in my content plan for the week. And then I'll do that, and I'll just be, I don't know why this idea is coming to me. It doesn't really feel relevant. Then I'll have someone message me and say, oh my gosh, that was the exact thing I needed to hear today. How can I work with you? And it's like, boom. I couldn't have known that person was going to see that post and was going to make that connection when I had the idea. But I just trust, and this is a practice, like I said, getting in the practice of trusting that when you have those inspirations, there's a bigger plan out there that is wilder than your imagination, and that's there to help you continue the journey without you having to figure it all out on your own.
Whew. Okay, this is, you see my brain kind of went in all these different directions, because it's like you're saying all the right things, and it's like it's exploding in my head. Trust your inspiration. And you said linear creation. The other day I said to myself, it's like I was calling myself a scatterbrain, and I said, no, I'm not a scatterbrain. I'm a non-linear thinker.
Exactly.
Yeah, so again, if we just remove that whole hat that tells us that there's something wrong with us, we, as we are very magical beings. And I mean, if we could say, what's the one big thing? That's the one big thing that we forget. Totally forget how powerful we are. And the other thought I had while you were talking is that, we have these great tools technologically. We got social media. We're all overstimulated and overcoached You know what I mean? We're
Mm.
overcoached. We're thinking of the steps. And I mean, I'm having that problem like on my Instagram because I'm thinking too hard. Batch your content. What should your content? How many reels should you post every day? And that's not my flow. It's not. And it's like, why think that hard about what you're going to post? You know, you have a specific message every day. If you could, you know, unleash the way it's being given to you and not
Yeah.
question the, you know, you want it in a linear fashion. Somebody give me the steps. Somebody tell me what to do. What do I do after this? Sometimes that's not what it is. Sometimes you have a particular message. And going back to Big Magic, in the book, she says the same thing. It's not for anybody else to figure out. It's you. This is you, you know, and it's like against our nature to just let it fly and be inspired on a moment to moment basis.
And can I add something? It's also evidence of our cultural like lack and scarcity mentality, because we think the ideas are going to go away. The ideas are going to be there every day, right? Like the ideas don't suddenly, you don't run out, and if you didn't organize it all, they're going to run away, or they're not going to be any left. Like that's a thing that I see too, that I think we don't talk about enough, is this idea of creative scarcity instead of creative abundance, in the sense that we think, oh, if I don't do my perfect content plan now, well, then I'm never going to have another good idea. It's like, are you joking? Sometimes when I procrastinate the most on my content plan is actually the month that I'll have some of my best content, because I'll just be like, as soon as I get an idea in the moment, I'll just grab onto it. And that sometimes is the best thing. Not to say you can never have any structure or you can never have any planning. I believe that for me with creativity, it's that intention of, okay, I'm intending to bring my creative work into the world. May not happen every single day. It may not happen at the same time, but I'm attuned to the field around me that's constantly inspiring me and constantly giving me messages. And by being in my life and knowing that I have this intention to create, things will come together when they're meant to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Trust. The most important word in there is trust. You know, again, I've got to break out the church fan because this is super hot right here. Okay, are we ready for number 3, or do we have any more? Okay, so number
I think
3.
we're ready. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So number 3, get into your body.
Uh-huh.
So along with the information that we know about our inner critic and how our inner critic is not our creative state, what we also know is that when we are in flow state, we feel in flow with ourselves, right? Think about when you're being analytical, you feel like you're in your head. That's actually why there's that phrase in your head, because you feel like you're just, yeah. When you're in flow with the world and whatever you're doing, you're opening up this channel in your body instead of having this separation between your head and your body, because you're in this feeling state. You're in this feeling of flow. You're allowing your emotions to guide you as well, right? You're allowing, I know sometimes I love the sensation from a new idea when you get that sort of tingling butterflies in your feeling, and you block that feeling when you're overthinking, and you block that feeling when you're trying to get new ideas or analyzing, because then you're just in your head, you're not in your body. And so we have all this information now that when we're in the feelings, when we're tuned into our actual being, right? Not just the head part of us, but our whole being, we are able to be more in flow. And so much of this links up to what we were talking about at the beginning with cycles, because when we understand and tune into our energy every day, we also can kind of tune into, well, is today going to be a creative day, or is today more of a resting day, you know? And allowing your body to guide your own creative rhythm. Because as much as I believe your creativity can expand and can be, you know, heightened beyond what is happening now, you also probably can't be creative every single day to the extent that we might idealize, right, in our culture. And so instead, it's like, how can we start working with the rhythm of our body? allowing ourselves to recover and rest when we need to, and allowing ourselves to produce and create when our bodies also feel that creative activation. When you're tingly about something, when you're passionate, when you feel it in your heart, when you feel it in your, in your stomach, in your womb space, like all of these things come together when we're truly creatively activated.
Mm-hmm. Girl, so many things. Break the habit of being yourself. Is that Dr. Joe Dispenza? That's the book is talking the same
that's the
thing.
book.
It's like, the last thing we tend to trust is our bodies. We want to jump into our heads first, and that can kill a lot of things too. I'm going to put this comment up here. Cynthia said something that I was thinking, but sometimes I think my recovery period is too long. So I want to go back to like the budgeting. It's almost like if you just go ahead and rest on the days you feel that you need to rest and stop resisting it. You know what I mean? Because some days it's like, why was that tripping? When everything comes back, it's like, why was that tripping? It's like all the great ideas are right here and the flow is back. So it's almost like instead of, I'm just going to let myself rest for 5 minutes. Hey, if you just let yourself rest for this particular day, and then, everything kind of comes back bigger, faster, stronger because you've taken the rest that you need.
Yeah. And I also want to add that for those of us who have not been used to this, right? Who have lived for so long in this kind of chaotic, stressed out, strung out, overworked state, your body may need an extended rest period. Regardless of your cycle. When I lost my cycle and then was trying to get it back and eventually got it back naturally, I had one of the most exhausted years of my life, which was so hard because I had become so used to working at 150%. And because I lost my cycle, I didn't have those ups and downs. I was fully stable, right? Because my hormones weren't cycling. I wasn't going through all the changes. So when my hormones started cycling again, it was such a flood of emotion and this energetic kind of weight that I had to process. And so I had to basically be restful for a year. Not that I didn't do anything, but I kind of consider that my recovery period. So if you think about how many years have you spent expecting yourself to be at 150%, that's probably going to impact how much time you'll need to have more rest and recovery in your life. And your body knows what it needs. And it's not going to be forever, but it may be longer than your head thinks it will be, right?
Preach, 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 Sarah. You hit the nail on the head. There's been so many years that we've been operating like this. And part two, these are strange times that we're living in. I don't think anybody's at 100% right now. I certainly don't feel anywhere near, because there's lots of mental and emotional things that we did not get closure on this past year. If you've suffered any grief, I lost my grandmother at the beginning of the pandemic. And sometimes it's just, I have to take a moment. I just have to take a moment. And, again, I'm a 50-something-year-old woman, and I was like, I miss my grandmother, and I just have to take a moment and grieve, literal grief. So we have to be patient and compassionate with ourselves, especially right now. Especially, it's like we're moving in a different pace because of the pandemic. We're carrying bigger burdens because of the pandemic. It's so many things. We have to ease up off that judgment piece of it. It's painful. It's a lot of pain that's in there that we don't even know what to call it because we've never experienced. You know what I mean? This type of, this way of being. So this has been so amazing. And I know you have a tight schedule today. This has been very healing and revealing for me. How do we find out more? How do we follow? How do we support? Tell us what to do. We're there.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun discussion. And I just wanted to say I love your insights too, because hearing other people's perspectives also enriches the work I do and helps me understand, oh, yeah, this is what it feels like for that person. So I bet other people are feeling like that. Because just like we said at the beginning, if one of us has gone through it, we're probably all thinking the same thing. And it just shows we're not alone. So if you would like to follow along with me, Instagram is definitely the best place. I'm at Sarah with an H, make sure, like on the screen, the number 0 Blake, at Sarah 0 Blake. And I share a lot of content there. I do have some one-on-one sessions if you want to work through some creative hangups that you might have, some blocks. If you're ready to birth a new creative offering, but you're feeling like beliefs or patterns are holding you back, as well as sessions where you can just figure out how to better align your business, your work, your life with your body. And then, like I said at the beginning, my group program, Flow Create, which is all about learning like the basics of cycles and really integrating your life, integrating them into your life so that once you start, you can't go back. I'm sure you've had that experience too, Nikki. Once you start learning about this stuff, you're like, my perspective on my energy has forever changed, right?
This is the new me.
Yes. Yeah, and it's just like it really is something that will affect the way your expectations for yourself, the way you plan your life, how you treat your body. That'll be opening back in October. But for now, just hang out with the content. Send me a message if you enjoyed this. I love to, connect with people who are plugged in and listening. And yeah, it was such a pleasure to be here.
Oh man, it's a life-changing, life-shifting, just, we've been talking for not even an hour and I just feel relieved. I feel relieved and I feel like I have language for what I'm experiencing. All these things are so important and they're, it's like epic layers underneath. Oh, I've got this issue, you've given us some great tools and we'll definitely be watching, following, supporting, liking, sharing, and probably giving you, messages and DMs and things because it's so helpful. This has been a really helpful conversation. Sarah Blake from Toronto, Canada. Today, she is a writer, creativity mentor, cyclical living guide, and you've definitely given us some nuggets to chew on today. Thank you so much for being a part of the Prosperity Project, rising into creative activation. I feel like I'm rising, out of my chair today. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Nikki. It's been such a joy.
Yes, it has. And we'll see you next week on the Prosperity Project. Bye.